Hello, everybody. How are we today? Good? Excited? You having a good day today? Good talks? Awesome. Well, I have a lot to go over, and my time's already going, so I'm going to jump right into it. As Nicholas was kind enough to say, my name is Brad Logston. I'm the Director of Technology and Sales at Crane Worldwide. And we're going to be talking today about thinking different about technology, inspirations from the video game industry. So my background, I've been in logistics for exactly 2 years. My historical all comes from video games. I was a producer in video games for 10 years. I've worked on products from every platform you can imagine: PS3, Xbox 360, PS4, PC, mobile, kind of the whole gambit. And the images you're seeing on the screen here are all titles that I've worked on over my career. And something that Crane decided to do a couple years ago was, take some people that thought about technology very differently and bring them in to Crane to try to build some cool solutions for our clients. It started with hiring our CIO, Adele Chavalet, who was the CEO of a game studio for a while that I worked with, and he brought some of us crazy game developers over to try to do things different. So I'm going to chat with you about a couple strategies that we've been leveraging at Crane to build those technology solutions, and maybe you'll be able to get some of that and take it home and use it for your own products and whatnot. Most of it's going to seem pretty no-brainer and simple, but I think that when you really think about it and how to leverage them, it can be very impactful. So I get a question a lot. Oh, I forgot about this. That is me. That was at New York City Comic Con in 2013. Yes, in video games you can have long hair and mutton chops, and people think it's kind of cool. So just a little bit about looking differently when you're doing technology, I guess, huh? So one question I get asked a lot that I just wanted to get right out the door is, what is a producer? What role does that serve? And I figured I might as well just give that answer so everyone kind of knew. So there's two schools of thought in the games industry, or two primary schools of thought. One of them is the project manager type producer. This is the task manager, the person that's responsible for scheduling and budget and making sure everything is being done effectively and the teams are working as good as they can and they're not being blocked. There's a second school of producer in the games industry where you're really the vision holder. You're responsible for, what is that game that you're going to deliver to your users or to your players? Is the team helping make that experience the best it's going to be, helping them make something that you're going to be able to sell? I've served both of those roles in the industry at different studios that I've been at. I've been the project manager type and I've been the vision holder type. And a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about here draw from both sets of experience. So strategy number one, or technique number one, is this idea of establishing key pillars whenever you're going to build a project or whenever you're going to do something in technology. And in games, this is a technique that a lot of studios use because games are such a wide experience. There's so many different genres and so many variations on a theme in genres. We're an entertainment industry. And so, for example, if you were making a racing game, there's one example of a racer type game. It's called Gran Turismo. It's a very realistic looking simulator type game where the physics are as close to real as possible. And that's a very different experience than a game like this, which is this is a game called Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. You can drive a cop car and launch, put down spike strips. Your cars can get afterburners to them. You can do off-roading. It's a very, very different type of racer. Or you have games like this, which many of you probably recognize, where you can, throw in green turtle shells at people. So many different ranges inside of the same type of main genre, a racer. So how do you keep teams aligned? Especially sometimes these teams are 300 or 400 people. Establishing these key pillars, these things that were important to you when you started the project to help guide your decision-making process can be very important. So one example of that, say we're trying to make an arcade racer together. Okay, you're part of my team. We decide that one key pillar we have is that we want our players to experience this incredible sense of speed. We want the cars to feel really fast and everything to be just very quick and dynamic. A lot of decisions can fall from that one key pillar. You could have this idea of, okay, if we're going to have an incredible sense of speed, then we may not want to have very realistic controls, because if the cars are going super fast and it's more realistic, then everyone's going to be running into walls and they're not going to have any fun playing the game. Right? Or even the way that you decided to decorate the size of the tracks. You don't really need to add as many details per se, or be as complex with those details when they're going to be going by very fast. And you also want to be cognizant of performance and frame rate when you're doing that, because you want to make sure the game performs very well. And those are two very simple examples of how that one key pillar can start cascading down to very low-level decisions about how you're going to make this thing. And establishing that as a project can do a lot to help realize the vision that you had in the very beginning. We leveraged this exact technique at Crane when we built our solution called CView. Now, this is for logistics clients of ours that do transportation business with us. And one of our key pillars when we started this project, before we had done any designing or coding, we sat down and said, what was important to us about this? What do we want to accomplish? Taking that technique from gaming. And one of them was this idea of surfacing actionable information. So our users could make decisions at a glance and see what things pop out to them. We were going to have track and trace. We were going to have great search. And though we had that, that wasn't our primary focus. Our goal was that we wanted things to come forward to the user so they could understand them without having to input anything, just by logging in. And so you can kind of see that pillar demonstrating itself with the exceptions widget front and center in red. These are the shipments that have an issue with them. You can react to them. The way that we've created our 5-day delivery forecast you see up there with these things that are on fire to call attention to them. Everything was designed to surface. And we actually had some designs or some ideas that we threw out because it didn't meet this key pillar. Originally when we were talking about the portal, we were talking about doing a very modular design where you could customize everything, but it ended up kind of conflicting with that pillar as we thought about it more, because if people can completely customize their dashboard, they could take that exception thing that we know is important to them, to most users, and throw it all the way down at the bottom of the page. And all of a sudden the idea of surfacing things gets reduced. So deciding what was important to us in the beginning, aligning the team with those 3 pillars, we had about 5 or 6 of them, and then using them constantly as a razor's edge to help make decisions was very, very effective for us. And I really challenge you, if you have technology or even non-technology products that you're working on right now, maybe take a step back, sit down with your teams, establish a couple key statements, and then heartbeat them all the time. Use them to look at your own decisions and think, is this thing really important, or are we just in the moment right now and it doesn't really fit the real vision that we wanted to establish? Another technique that we took from gaming, if my clicker will go, there we go, was this idea of early access. So if anyone is familiar with the gaming industry, it's a trend that really picked up steam back in 2012, the idea of getting users access to your product while it was very much in development in an early state. The game that really catapulted that was this game called MechWarrior Online. It went through a founders program in 2012, and though there have been other founders programs, none were as successful as MechWarrior Online was at the time. It pulled in $5 million before the thing had even gone out in kind of pre-roll money, and this was before Kickstarter would even picked up. They were only doing 1 or 2 million as their biggest success. And this was, though you had packages, it was a free-to-play title, so you were going to be able to buy microtransactions. The idea, one of the big ideas here was get into the game early, get while we're still building it, interact with the development team, and gamers got really excited about that. And this started cascading everywhere. I was actually doing a biz dev tour in that time frame, meeting with publishers, and every publisher was talking about it. How do we get players to spend money with us early? How do we get that dynamic engagement? And it ended up being crystallized with Valve released this platform called Early Access. Great name for it, I guess. Just call it what it is. If anyone is not familiar with Steam, Steam is the digital marketplace for PC games. It's the authoritative marketplace. Something like 90% of PC games are purchased on this platform. And in early access, there's some conflict. Some people think it's good. Some people think it's not so good. But there's been a lot of good success stories out there. And a lot of them have that tale of, hey, you know what? Our game is broken as hell. A lot of bugs. Features are light, but come join us in this journey of developing it together. We're going to get your feedback, and we're going to use that to make decisions. Because, man, if you're going to spend 3 or 4 years building a game, and then you're going to release it, you could have spent a large amount of time on something that your player base doesn't care about at all. And if you can get access to those players early and get their feedback while you're still very much in development, man, you can be more dynamic into the things you want to spend time on. You can react to their feedback much more organically. And as an added benefit, you can teach your team how to live in that DevOps or that live software as a service environment from the get-go instead of having to try to learn that right when you're going and launching. So we at Crane decided to take a very similar approach to Seaview. We rebranded it Early Start because I can't just do exactly what they do. But we took the same approach. We started development of Seaview in April of 2016. We had not designed anything, not coded anything. 4 months later, we onboarded our first clients onto the tool. We had a very feature-light experience, but we picked 3 clients that we had intimate relationships with, and we said, hey, why don't you come with us on this journey? Yes, it's going to be a little bit broken. Yes, it's feature-light, but we'd love to have your input while we're building it, and the things that you talk to us about, we promise you we're going to be reacting to them and incorporating them into what we're doing. The clients loved it because I thought they were getting a sneak peek. We loved it because we got that organic information and that feedback right away, and there were things that we had originally had on our roadmap and our plans that ended up being tabled and we still haven't done today because of those dynamic interactions with our client base. So whether it be an internal or an external project, even if it's not technology, think about these kind of ideas when you're trying to understand how to, launch something. I've heard this story over and over again. You spend all this time, all this money, years and years working on something to roll it out and find that most of it wasn't what your users need in the first place. Being able to get that dynamic experience in the beginning can be very powerful, and it's a technique that we took from gaming that worked very well for us. The last one that I'm going to talk about is, I mention this concept to every client that I meet with when I'm talking to them about our technology or the portal. It's one of my favorite things, especially from a design perspective, to speak about. And I get the inspiration for this topic from some people argue whether Henry Ford said it or not, but I don't care. I like the quote, so I'm going to use it. The idea that if I had to ask people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They had no idea what a car was. And even if he didn't actually say this, a lot of people argue that he did live by this motto. He wanted to figure out what his users needed, not necessarily just provide them what they asked for. And some see that worked well for him in some places, not in others, but I still think it's a very interesting technique that you can use. And I call it the wants versus needs philosophy. People are always asking you for things. They always have things that are going to create inputs where they're going to react to a problem or react to something that is going on in their world, and they're going to request from you, whether this is a technology solution or you're just trying to service your customers or clients. And sometimes what they're asking for is not exactly what they need. And part of your job as providing a service or a technology solution is to translate or interpret that. There's a very famous story that I heard about at the Game Developers Conference a number of years ago that I'm going to tell. And it's a story of a game being built. It was a massive multiplayer game. If any of you those are familiar, they're very, very large games, huge teams, big budgets. Sometimes these games can be in development for 5 or 6, sometimes longer years. And this particular title, or MMOs in general, they have a concern where the users can burn through all of their content too quickly. You want users to play these games for years and years. They're a long-term engagement. And if they burn through all the content too quickly, then you can't produce enough to keep them engaged, and then you end up losing those users, and then you don't make any money off of them. That's not any good. So this particular studio was trying to figure out a creative way to help solve that problem. And some designers and the team thought, all right, here's what we're going to do. It's an MMO. Players gain experience. When players log in every day, they're going to start with 100% experience for all the activities they do. And then as they go through the game throughout that day and do more quests and do more things, we're going to drop their experience down to 90, 80, 70. Eventually, it's going to settle at 50%. So when they first start, they're going to be at 100%, and they're going to eventually end at 50. And the idea is that, hey, go do non-experience type things, and then come back the next day and play again. And then you go back to 100%. Slow down the content you're consuming and take it at a more measured pace. So they put this feature in the game, and they released it as part of their kind of pre-alpha, very early closed doors testing. Players hated it. Universally hated it. It was one of the most commented, talked about things that was going on. This is awful. Why is it you're punishing us? We sit there and we play your game for a little while, and now we're losing the ability to progress. This is ridiculous. This is dumb. You guys have to remove this thing. You must remove this feature. It's the worst thing in the world. And so obviously the team is talking about this, and some very smart and clever designers were going, listen, wait a second. I don't think they actually want us to remove this. I know that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying they want. But it's better for us if we can gate their progress. It's better for them if we can slow down their progress, because then they can have more fun with the game for a longer engagement. So instead what they did is they flipped the presentation. Instead of being 100% to 50%, they made it a bonus. Now it's 200%. You get bonus experience every time you log in, and then you drop down to 100%. It's the exact same math. Nothing changed in the feature except for how they presented it. All of a sudden, they revamped it, released it as a 200% bonus that dropped down to 100%. Everyone loved it. Great feature. Oh my gosh, thank you for giving. Users were waiting to do certain types of quests the next day. They would go and get to the point where they'd be at 100 experience. They would wait and then log off and then log in the next day and do that. The game that did this was a game that almost everyone knows. It's called World of Warcraft. I'm sure almost everyone in this room has heard of it before. The feature was their rest state feature. It was so successful that almost every single MMO in existence since then has used it. They all use this concept. If they had given what their players had wanted, this feature would have never existed. Instead, the designers interpreted that want into what they actually needed and then changed the system in order to give them something that really worked for them. And it sounds a little nuanced, but it's a very, very powerful mental exercise to go through when you're receiving feedback. And we've done the same thing in our portal. So in Seaview, when this thing first launched, remember we talked about the Early Start Initiative. We actually didn't have that 5-day delivery forecast. We had the 3 widgets on top, and we had some other stuff that's below the fold. And we were going and talking with those Early Start clients, and a couple of them are saying, hey, we love this. We love how we can see how many shipments are in transit. We can click on them and get right into that information. It's very engaging, very simple to use, awesome. But we can't see our deliveries. What's the schedule of deliveries coming in every single day? It'd be really nice if we could see that. And every single one of them wanted a graph. They all wanted a bar graph with days of the week on the bottom and bars on how many shipments were coming in. And I'm sitting there with a smile. I'm like, awesome. I really appreciate that feedback. In my head, I'm screaming. I'm like, oh my God, I am not putting a bar graph on this thing. Because as much as graphs may seem like a great idea, in my personal experience, graphs are some of the least actionable information you can create. And remember our key pillar again, surface actionable information to drive better and quicker decision making. We weren't going to do that. So we're struggling with how we're going to meet this need and not just throw a graph on the screen. I live in Florida. This is when Hurricane Matthew was coming through. I was on the weather.com websites tracking to see if the hurricane was going to come to us. It didn't. We were fine. But trying to figure it out and looking at all this stuff. And I was also on calls with the design team. And I'm like, man, you know what? As we're talking about it and as I'm doing this, I'm going, this is kind of what the clients are looking for, this forecast of their deliveries. Maybe we could kind of theme it and make it more look like a weather forecast. Thus birthed the idea of the 5-day delivery forecast. It's something a little more visually approachable. Clients, everyone looks at a weather forecast every day, so it kind of keys off of that visual style. You have those on-fire things, almost like if there's a thunderstorm or a snow day. Oh my gosh, pay attention to these. These are important. But it's a very intuitive at-a-glance thing, and it's not a graph. We went back, it was funny, one of the guys who had asked for this, one of the gentlemen that asked for the graph thing, was one of the executives at one of our clients' companies, and he doesn't use the portal. And we came back and we're doing another demo with him a year later and had him on a phone call with some of the other people in his team. And he saw this thing and he was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, this is I love this thing. And in the back of my head, I'm going, you're the one who asked for it. You just don't even remember that's what you asked for because you wanted, what you wanted is not what we gave you. So I challenge you as well to think about as you're engaging with users or clients or whatever it may be, when you're taking that feedback in, digest that to figure out what their actual needs are, not necessarily what they asked for right away. And again, it sounds very simple, but that exercise can be very complex. It took us a month before we figured out this is what we were going to give them. But you had to kind of hold that pace back because if you reacted immediately, and it's so easy to do that, you'd have a lot of problems. And from gaming, I tell you, you want a loud player base, you want a loud user base that never stops yelling at you for every single thing you ever do on Twitter and Facebook and every other place they connect with you. Gamers are ruthless. And if we gave them everything they wanted, they would destroy every game you ever made. You have to kind of digest that, and it's a very powerful exercise to go through. So, with conclusions, hopefully some of this information was useful for you. We had 3 strategies or techniques that we've been leveraging, inspirations from the gaming industry. One was the idea of establishing key pillars, thinking about what's important to your projects or your developments, and establishing those, publishing them, communicating to your teams, heartbeating them on a regular basis, using them to make decisions at the low level from what you established in the beginning so that you keep the execution of what you want to make in line with the vision that you thought about when you first started. Number 2, the idea of maybe doing an early access or early start program where you can get feedback midstream while you're developing as opposed to having to wait all the way after a very long development cycle and who knows if what you made is actually what people want to use. And also as an added benefit, training your teams to, maybe work as a DevOps or a live environment in the beginning. It may seem like it slows you down a little bit, but in the long run, your teams are going to be practiced and ready to go when you're launching and you're not having to worry about all those bad connection points with your users when you're trying to figure out how to be a live software as a service model down the road. And number 3, the idea of need versus wants. Taking and being that translation layer so you're not just always reacting to what people are asking for and giving them right away what they ask for to solve an immediate problem, but looking for that root cause analysis, trying to discover what those needs really are, and figuring out how you can best achieve them. Hopefully, a couple of these strategies will resonate with a few of you. Again, my name is Brad Logston. My email address is up there. My LinkedIn is up there. I welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation if you want to pick my brain a little bit more on other things that we may be doing to leverage some of these cool gaming techniques in a B2B space, which has been a lot of fun so far in the last couple of years as I've been doing it. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate your time, and if we have time for a question or two, that'd be great.
Yep. Any questions? Let's see.
Now let me off easy. Wow.
Really?
All right, this is driving me crazy. On that user interface on the bottom, you had all these squares and the number. One of them was like 4 squares and it had a 10. So what was that one?
I'd have to go back. We have different size of squares.
Yeah, right there.
So that box represents 10, because it's a big box. The little ones represent 1.
Okay.
So you'll see like the 4 small boxes, the 8 small boxes. But we had to, if we have a client that has 100 deliveries or 50 deliveries showing up, we can't just use a whole bunch of little small boxes.
Right.
We debated about that a lot in the design part. When we removed those boxes, it was interesting. We actually had iterations where those didn't exist. It didn't really inspire that weather forecast type look. You want like the thundercloud or the storm or whatever, so we're trying to find a way to kind of make it work. And the design team is actually still having a debate on whether we should adjust that some. But yeah, it stands for, the big box stands for 10.
Thanks.
Good eye. we have one more
else?
question over here?
Do you develop this software in-house?
Yeah, it's a combination of in-house and contractors. You know, we do both. We have in-house developers and we have some contractor resources to help.
It just looks awesome, but my 7-person team can't do that, so.
Well,
find you later.
I mean, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. A lot of it comes down to that, and I know it sounds so simple, but being disciplined about what your core pillars are and heart beating them all. I can't tell you how many designs I've seen show up across our design floor when we're like going through iterations where I look at them, I'm like, this is not going to work. Like, this is not meeting those things that we said we wanted to get, and just not giving that up once you decided. Every once in a while, I've been in teams where key pillars have shifted a little bit. Usually that's when you've decided to change the personality of a project. Say you're going to be like a digital distribution game, and you're going to do it as a single product launch, and now you're going to be a software as a service type game. That can change things pretty dramatically. But you really want to just go, no, this is what we all said was important. If we all agree this is important, let's not give this up. And iterate and iterate and iterate until you get where you want to be. All righty. Thank you very much, everybody.
Right.
Appreciate it.
Give them a round of applause.